Space, the final frontier. Never before have such iconic words been spoken in science fiction.
That's Scott.
Yeah?
Except for a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Star Trek all day, dude.
Star Wars.
Star Trek.
Yes, starting a sci-fi campaign this week on the Dungeon Masters Dojo.
Greetings and salutations, DMs, GMs, referees, judges, game operation directors, and all other variety of storyteller. I am Lou, and today I'm accompanied by the yin and yang of dice rollers, one of which has yet to confirm a hit on anything, the other with the twin D20s that spread fear across the land. They are, of course, Scott and Bill. Scott, Bill, how you guys doing this evening?
Pretty good, I guess.
My dice are hot, as always.
And mine are not, as always.
That's the way we like it when you run the games.
It's kind of like that Paula Abdul song, you know, where she was dancing with a cartoon cat.
Wow, where the hell did you get that?
So, Star Wars or Star Trek? The most diversive question in sci-fi. Can't we all just get along?
As long as we agree that Star Trek is the better science fiction, yeah, I don't see why not.
Well, it's good to be second right behind Star Wars. So
Star Trek is intelligent science fiction.
Hey, just because you can't follow the plots.
If you want to gamble about with your
Scott,
flashlight knives and...
Are you there?
Let's just start the episode.
Let's just start.
Yes. So, why run a sci-fi game?
Yeah, why not? You know, this is the Dungeon Masters Dojo, right? There's no dungeons or masters in sci-fi.
No, but there's still storytelling.
There is. And sometimes it's nice to take a break. You know, if you're feeling a burnout from running a fantasy campaign or a Western or whatever RPG you're doing, switching genres can be really refreshing.
It's tough to be suffering from a case of orchitis.
It is. It is. And there's no amount of creams or shots that'll make it better.
Yeah, there's no topical.
None at all. And we've all been there. And we actually done a few Star Wars. See, Star Trek wasn't in there. We ran Star Wars.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to read the back of a peach can label.
You could tell who the diehard is.
But stepping outside of your genre of choice can kind of keep things fresh. You know, it allows your players too to do something a little different.
Oh, it stretches our feet and our imagination.
Yeah, and that could be good when you get back to that game your group is known for. You know, our group is predominantly a D&D group, but we hit the buffet line of RPGs every now and again.
Absolutely. I know a lot of times when we'll jump out into the sci-fi world. Our group has a tendency to get really campy.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of it's a release. It's everyone you laugh a lot. There is a lot of borrowing from existing dialogue out there.
Wouldn't you say so, Scott?
It's a horrible invitation.
This is
it's horrible.
This is going to go on for a while now.
Yes, it is.
This may bleed over into other episodes.
All right, Scott, get us started. Let's go into a couple of subgenres. Science fiction is very, very broad.
It is.
So let's cut it down to a few. I mean, there's a lot of subgenres, but
all right, I'll get us started, and then you can toss a couple in after. How's that sound?
Sure, go for it.
All right, let's talk about cyberpunk. So cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction. It's noted for its focus on high tech, and it takes its name from a combination of cybernetics and punk. So you have this Johnny Mnemonic comes to mind.
Oh yeah,
when I think,
real quick.
Cyberpunk.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
One of my favorite movies too, by the way. Loved it. Dolph Lundgren is the preacher, and anything with Henry Rollins is a home run. So it features a lot of advanced technology, computers, information systems, implants, that sort of thing, with usually some sort of dystopian elements. There's a breakdown in the social order of things. A lot of the classic kind of cyberpunk characters are usually they're outside of the mainstream, kind of loners or part of marginalized groups, castaways. Yeah. They're the daily life there is in this dystopian future is kind of impacted by all this technological change that's happening at like breakneck speed. It's you
also see a lot of parallels between that and ancient cultures where there's the have and the have-nots. There's the 1% that sits up top, way up top, and everybody else, and then usually your player characters are below that.
Yeah, it's a very, very big gap, a huge divide. There's nothing in the middle, and that's cyberpunk, and cyberpunk is I don't know. It's kind of nice to step into a cyberpunk kind of environment for a couple play sessions, to get a little dark,
Oh yeah. Well, you can't help but get dark in that.
Yeah,
in cyberpunk.
Yep, you certainly can't. Another one of my favorites is the post-apocalyptic sci-fi setting.
One of my faves.
Yeah, mine too. Thundar the Barbarian was probably my favorite kind of post-apocalyptic setting for anything. But Damnation Alley was pretty cool as well.
Logan's Run was up.
Logan's Run was that was fantastic.
Even more recently, I think Player One Ready.
Yes.
Ready Player One. I love that movie. Yeah. I can watch it over and over and over again. Apocalyptic science fiction is a subgenre again. It's concerned with kind of like the end of civilization, right? This is what we're focusing on. The end of the world as we know it, so to speak.
And the end in rebuilding-ish?
Yeah, usually the early stages. So you have like nuclear war, plague, or some other general disaster. Maybe a rogue comet passes between the Earth and the Moon.
Yep.
Wreaking cosmic destruction.
Yellowstone finally blew up.
Finally, after all this. Well, actually, you shouldn't be talking about this. We're still like halfway through 2020. We got 6 months to go.
That's a lot that can happen.
Yeah, once we're past the alien invasion, the giant murder hornets, who knows? Yellowstone could be going. Or the invasion of Bigfoots or feets. I don't know. Whatever
Sasquatches.
Sasquatches. So civilization is trying to rebuild after whatever this disaster happens to be. You'll get stuff like immediately after the disaster. Maybe there's a couple centuries have passed or whatever. So you're getting some civilization that's out there. It might be something more immediate, like maybe the Mad Max post-apocalyptic timeline.
No, Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, another great one. Not the one with Marky Mark, but Charlton Heston.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Those are the originals.
The great ones. Even the bad ones were pretty good. So a lot of these will focus on maybe, the psychology of living in a post-apocalyptic world. But some of the games themselves, of course, a lot of combat, a lot of kind of survival elements.
They do have a lot. They
are
usually combat heavy.
Yeah,
because everything's trying to eat you or take things from you, whether it's your food, your water, body parts.
Yeah, there's that ever present struggle with these. Science is a little blurry in a post-apocalyptic setting.
Usually, the only things that work are the weapons.
The weapons, urine stills, that sort of thing. Everybody's eating dog food. You'll still get your dystopic societies that are kind of a balance against the utopias that usually pop up every now and again in these sort of settings. And then science fantasy. Again, I like Star Wars. Not as good as Star Trek. That's hard science, but Star Wars kind of falls in the science fantasy. You know, you could take the lightsabers and the blasters out and put swords and shields in everybody's hands, and you have a fantasy element there. So this is a fusion between the two kind of main genres. You know, the cousins, science fiction and fantasy. It's their kind of their love child.
Well, it's the easiest crossover too. If you're coming out of a fantasy world, whichever one you're in, it's the easiest to step into, where people can still pick up their swords and everything like that, but there's considerably more technology usually blended in there as well.
Well, yeah, and when we did that on one of our long week vacations, we went to Star Wars. Star Wars. And I think everybody took to it because you had your swords. You guys had force power, which is like your magic.
Yep.
Right.
So it does cross over very easily.
And it was okay. Okay.
Your level of tolerance is commendable.
It was like an overcooked steak, you know. It was like, it's still a steak, I guess. You know, it's still a game, but you know, it's.
Did you have a good time?
I had a good time, but I didn't have a great time.
Did you have a great time playing Star Trek? No,
Always.
You didn't, because we didn't play it.
I have a set of rules. We'll have to play it.
Well, I guess we'll give it a shot.
Just to satisfy. Oh no, I guess he's running yet another game.
Later, much later. So this science fantasy, it will generally have like fantasy element to it, fantastical kind of like plots or subplots, rescuing the princess, and it'll have characters that are easily recognizable in a fantasy setting. You know, the humble farm boy that becomes a knight.
Yep.
You know, the weazened old master swordsman that teaches the farm boy the art of swordplay, that sort of thing. Like some of the books I get to, like Anne McCaffrey's Pern novels, I think would be science fantasy.
Oh, very much so. I have the entire series. I actually enjoyed it.
I thought it was really good. I thought it was very very different from what was coming out at the time.
It started off with science. It went back to fantasy, and at the end of the series, the science came back into it again. And I found it very enjoyable. Yeah,
and there's a lot of cloudiness usually between technology, science, and what's going on. You know, Lou mentioned the Force. You know, which really there was no concrete explanation for the Force other than
you're going to use the M word.
No, I will not. I'm still upset about the M word until those wretched prequels, and I know I'll probably catch hell from people for saying that, but I'm sorry. But yeah, until the M word, some 20, 30 years later, they decided to ruin it by explaining it. So that's it. That's your science fantasy. Bill, what do you have?
What do I have? Let's take a gander, shall we? Time travel.
Oh yeah,
time travel.
Yeah,
big one. I was, like I said, I was an avid reader early on, so for me, like H.G. Wells was huge. I loved H.G. Wells. A lot of what he put out. Along with him, there was a couple others out there that were putting out some really, really good stuff. But that started the whole, all right, let's go back and influence the past. Let's go back and influence the future. Let's, and then the dichotomy of, did we actually change the future, or did us going back was the reason the future happened in the first place? So, time travel is very, very interesting, and there's a couple systems out there. Space 1889 was out there. That worked out very, very well. Etherscape was out there. Atomic Highway. These are all games that were fairly, they're part of my segue too, because they're part time travel and they're also part steampunk. which would be my next pick. The whole steampunk infusion is really cool. You can't go to a Ren fair without seeing a ton of steampunk. No. It's everywhere. So, the whole Victorian age with technology, all powered by steam or magic or something like that. The whole steampunk thing is huge, and the systems that came out for that are really, really good. The biggest one being Thefra is very, very fantastical. It has a big fantasy flavor to it, but it's all wrapped around airships and steam-powered mechanics, and so that's a really fun game to play if you want to do a little bit of steampunk.
Yeah, you do see a lot of more steampunk these days. I know, like, my kids are both into playing Fable. The whole Fable series is all steampunky.
Yep.
And it's just very interesting to see how everything works because of their technology, is what they call it, running off of steam. If they don't have that power, nothing works.
Oh, they even played it a little bit with Anime with a Howl's Moving Castle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the energy source was a fire elemental, but it ran off of steam.
Right.
And magic, but nonetheless, the two blend together. And let's face it, any technology you don't understand is most oftenly interpreted as magic. So you got H.G. Wells, Jules Verne's, Edward Ellis. I mean, there's a number of really, really good resource material that you can read to help build up something for you for a steampunk.
What do you think about the Nautilus build? Where do you think that lies? Do you think that lies more in science or steampunkiness? When you think about
the Nautilus is, wow, that actually, I think it's more steampunk.
I would have to agree with that. It's more steampunk.
It's steampunk.
Everything's run off of water and heat and steam.
Yep.
There's no nuclear power, no nothing.
Actually, it was nuclear power.
Well,
but I mean, they didn't come around and say it's nuclear power.
Right.
But they alluded to elements that help make steam and blah, blah, blah. So,
and I think that depends on which version of the movie you watch,
This is true. Well, yeah, there's got to be 16 versions out there now by now. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea being the best, but
hands down.
Yep. But still, that would be very much steampunk.
I would agree.
And I think the other one is extraterrestrial life. Whether you're going to it or it's coming to you, as far as science fiction
like in
is concerned.
Star Trek,
or Star Wars if you haven't been to that planet.
See, I knew this would start it right back up again. There's a system out there called Necessary Evil, where the aliens show up and they kill all the heroes, and the only people left to save the world are all the villains. So it's a really cool system. You get to play the villain and the good guy at the same time. So
you don't see that every day.
So the morals thing, a lot of times, and you're dealing with aliens and not necessarily humans. So that whole moral thing usually goes out the window, and everyone it turns into very hack and slash very easily. One of my faves, and once again dating myself, Robotech.
I was thinking
give me
about
Robotech
that one
and the
earlier.
invade invasion any day. Now let's face it, the Palladian system was not smooth.
No, by far.
But we incorporated a lot of house rules, smoothed the system out for us, and you played with me.
Yeah, I did. That was an awesome game.
And we had some very, very fantastic times with that. So, I mean, you got a variety of things you can go with those, but because you're dealing with androids, cyborgs, hive minds, symbiotes, shapeshifters, just plain old chunks of aliens. It's all over the place. Imagine, we got the 4th of July coming up, and they're playing the 4th of July movie all the time.
Yes.
I swear it's on like every channel, or it's on at least one channel 24/7. It's an alien invasion. You could very easily turn your game into something like that, where you are the guerrilla outfit trying to hold them back. And so extraterrestrials are always a great way to go.
Like V.
Remember
that? That was
very much. Yep.
Mark Singer.
That was a really good TV series. I enjoyed that. So, I mean, there's my 3 off the top of my head.
So you mentioned some rule sets for some of those. Cyberpunk comes to mind for, of course, the cyberpunk setting. Long before there was the cyberpunk video game.
Oh, long before.
There was the cyberpunk tabletop RPG game. Today it's updated. It's Cyberpunk Red, but it's still out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the great grandfather of the video game, but still holds up pretty well. I don't think you can talk post-apocalyptic anything as far as role-playing games go without mentioning Gamma World or Metamorphosis Alpha.
Yeah,
its predecessor.
I mean, I remember when Gamma World first came out. I had a blast with that.
1978, yeah.
I had a blast with that game. Very first character was an albino demolitions expert spider.
I've only briefly touched that game, and I think it was with you once, maybe. But
Yeah.
I just vaguely remember that game, to be honest.
I had fun with that for a good 3-4 years.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and with every incarnation of it, it got a little smoother.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't played anything beyond, I think, the second edition of it. Where the artwork greatly improved, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. It didn't take the post-apocalyptic genre too seriously,
No.
which made it a lot of fun. It was a little silly, but I think the silliness worked for it.
Yeah, it was a little tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
A system that I really liked, started playing it when it first came out, was Travelers. Traveler 2000, now it's Traveler 2020 or something like that.
Yeah.
They've had a couple incarnations. That was more towards your space fantasy and cyberpunk-ish. We used that particular game quite a bit. One of the things I liked, I believe that was a game that originally had a life path. When you first started, you made your character,
Yep.
and your character could actually be killed during creation.
Boy, that's frustrating.
Oh, it's great. You get right to the end, and all of a sudden it's like, there was an accident, and just before I got all my special abilities and everything, I got blowed up. That sucks. I got to start over.
That would suck.
Yeah, and there were a bunch of little books for that. When I first
Yeah.
was introduced to the system, there were a ton of these little books.
Mm-hmm.
And they were cool. I think that was one of the biggest draws for me. It was in a different kind of format, and the character creation was fun. Of course, getting to the end of character creation and dying, I mean, that really sucks. But it was almost like a game within a game. The whole
very
character
much.
creation thing.
Your session 0, creating your character, it took a whole night because everyone had to go through all these different steps, but it was fun. And just they said it was a session all by itself, just getting your character up and running. But that was fun. I enjoyed that system, and it was relatively easy.
Yeah. It wasn't too cumbersome at all, and it was it was almost like a space opera too.
Yeah, it could have been. Well, I mean, it depends on what you dropped into, because they had you had your addendums for aliens and cyborgs, and I mean, it fell into this space fantasy. Very easily.
Every little book you got,
Mm-hmm.
it opened up other opportunities for gameplay. What about Shadowrun? When I think science fantasy, Shadowrun's like the first thing that pops up into my head, and it's got kind of like that steampunky or cyberpunk element to
I
it.
thought it was a little bit more on the cyberpunk side myself.
No, I enjoyed it. We started playing that game for a while back in mid '80s. And we had a good run with it for about 4 or 5 years on a single campaign, and it went really, really well. We enjoyed it. Then we found Bureau 13.
I'm familiar with the name, but not the game. I've never
Same
played.
here.
The premise was Abraham Lincoln started a shadow group with the Pinkertons, and they were looking out paranormal activity.
That sounds like great fun.
Think of the X-Files starting in the 1800s.
Sounds like a movie, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Kind of. That could have been an inspiration for it, but it was Bureau 13 was another dark where you're basically the shock troops, the wet works going out there and trying to figure out what was going on, and then you could draw in pretty much anything you wanted off of that. If there was a problem, I believe their motto was protect the U.S. from everything.
That's a
Or
good
something along those lines. Yep. But that was a fun one. We spun from one, and we just got a little bit darker and spun into Bureau 13. Again, was a space fantasy. because we were throwing all kinds of werewolves and vampires and ghosts, and we were playing with aliens for a little bit. So, I mean, again, we threw a little bit of everything into there. So
it sounds a little like that Marvel Superheroes game that we play on occasion when we need a break, the Donnelly Files.
Yes.
That,
It was
I
very
would say, is one hell of a game.
Thank you.
And that's another engine that you could use the Marvel system in anything. We do.
Yeah.
It's adaptable to anything.
Yeah, it's adaptable to everything.
And so easy.
It is.
So easy to pick.
Just pick your year.
It's usually one of our go-tos when we're going to start something new and we can't figure out what engine we're going to use. We jump to the Marvel.
You guys should check it out. The source books are really expensive on Amazon, but there's was it Marvel Superheroes Forever, I think is the website that's out there.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's got a lot of resources available.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth checking out. And I'm surprised actually that they haven't done anything along the lines of that system, because it was pretty easy.
It is. When you got a chart sitting right in front of you, and it's just percentiles.
Yeah.
Everything's percentiles. Makes it real easy.
One set of dice,
Mm-hmm.
and that handy chart, and you're good to go.
Yep. And after a while, you can start rolling and go, all right, you know exactly where you fell on the chart. Red, green, yellow.
Yep.
And
Yeah, that was that whole system is a very good system. Like you said, it's adaptable to anything.
Yeah.
we've used it for superheroes. We used it for fantasy. We've used it for
Sci-fi.
We used it for
Steampunky,
and science fantasy.
Yep.
We even used it for a Western at one point.
That's right.
Yep. You can go, and I think what makes it great is you can go really low power stuff like we do when we do the Donnelly Files. You could go like really high power stuff.
Right. There's some of our superhero stuff.
Yeah. And its versatility is fantastic.
Extremely scalable.
Yep.
System wise, I think that's probably my favorite system. So
Now let's take a break. Hey there, it's DM Scott. That's right, I'm talking to you. Yeah, you, the chubby guy wearing the This Is How I Roll t-shirt. Why don't you ditch that ratty old t-shirt that's 2 sizes too small for you? Where'd you get that? Baby Gap? Head on over to our Merchant Morris store on our epic new website. Grab yourself some Dungeon Masters Dojo logo wear. You won't regret it. Rock that t-shirt like the nerd boss you are. It's sleek and it's black, and everyone knows that black is slimming. Hell, I look like a slender 3XL when I'm wearing this black shirt. Not only will you look deceptively less chunky, but with that bold red and white logo, you look like a superhero. And who doesn't want to look like a superhero? So head on over to the DungeonMastersDojo.com merch and more to fill your bag with our swag. See you next time in the dojo. And we're back. Hope you guys missed us.
So where do we leave off, Scott?
Well, we talked for a while about some game systems that you folks should give a try to if you were interested in any of those genres that we threw out there.
So what about some of the common issues we may run into running those?
Oh yeah, if you're a fantasy DM and you make that transition from one of those neatly boxed sets, or maybe you've been playing since the beginning like we have, it can be hard. One of the biggest problems I think you could run into is it's easy to kind of fall out of your subgenre. You could find yourself moving from post-apocalyptic to kind of a cyberpunk or alien invasion type of thing, and it may not work. Sometimes it will.
What they'll do is they'll throw different things out there, and it's like, oh, we're doing a post-apocalyptic, but we're going to throw some aliens in there. Too many ingredients in the soup, and you end up with slop.
Bad taste.
Just stick with what you have. I mean, try to stay close to your genre. There's more than enough resource material out there that you can draw from to make sure you stay on track. Use that and try not to throw too many things in there at once.
Pretty much you're saying, just keep it small, keep it light.
If you're established for a while and things are going well and you want to throw a little flavor in, you sprinkle a little here and there in, but don't try to jump from one to another. It's going to muddy the water, confuse your players, and it's going to be very, very difficult for you to keep track of what you're putting out there.
And to bring it back, too. You
absolutely.
Get your players used to science fantasy when you started off with, a steampunk kind of theme or subgenre in your sci-fi game, then they may get stuck in there. So it's going to be hard for you to bring it back. And like Bill said, the waters get muddy. They're going to lose their way. They're not really going to know what style or subgenre they're playing in anymore. They'll get lost.
Well, ultimately, there's supposed to be a goal. I mean, you write your scenario. There should be a goal.
Yeah.
You're heading towards, and it's really tough when you jump on the red train and you should be on the green train. Now you're lost. You don't know how to get back. Just don't muddy the water with a whole lot of different things all at once. Stick to your one subgenre and go with it. There's more than enough material out there for you to throw out there to not have to, all right, let's throw aliens. And, oh, by the way, you're finding, you ran into a factory where they're manufacturing parts for people. And if that's what is in your subgenre, great. But if it's not, leave it alone. Yeah.
And Lou brought up a point that I thought was really good. And it was staying small. Stay small when you first start your sci-fi game, because running a world is tricky. It can be hard. And you do that when you're a DM and you're running, Dungeons and Dragons, or for you Pathfinder folks out there, it's the same thing. But when you start sci-fi, if you're doing a space opera, or if you're in the Star Trek universe or Star Wars, you're dealing not just with a planet, you're dealing with like an entire galaxy of planets.
Yeah, solar system, a universe. You're all over the place.
Multiple cultural societies, too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stay small. Stay on a planet, on your space station for a while until you get comfortable with it. Because you don't want, when you're dealing with a lot of alien races, you don't want them all to seem like carbon copies of the last one you encountered.
Oh, that's what's going to happen, because you're going to run out of ideas really fast.
Really, really fast. You don't want to overdo it.
Yeah, so you got to do a lot of homework.
You have to do a lot of homework.
Homework and notes, yeah.
Yep.
If you have to, if you're going to bring up a bunch of races and create some races, or even use the ones that exist, get out a piece of paper and jot down all the information you can on that one race and leave it on one piece of paper so you have a reference.
Yep. Yeah. Take notes.
Take notes.
Do your homework. Study, because there's going to be that one guy at the table.
The wild card.
The wild card that's going to know all sorts of sciencey stuff.
Let's steal a shuttlecraft and take off and hit or stow away on this this battle cruiser, and off they go to somewhere else. You're way off track now.
Yep. Got to rein them in.
Yep.
Rein those wild cards in, Lewis. Rein them in.
I think the wild card is needed sometimes, though.
Yes, they are. Not as often as the wild card will have you think, though. So, yeah, don't get too big too fast. Kind of do baby steps. Keep them on a space station, spaceport for a few sessions. Get them used to the world they're on, and then kind of get them involved with moving to another planet. But don't just give them the keys to the spaceship and say go wherever it is you want.
Or go from the spaceship to the planet that's supporting it.
Yep.
And back and forth.
Well,
a little Deep Space Nine-ish.
Yeah, because when you start expanding so fast, so quick, it becomes very intimidating, not just for the GM, but for the players as well, because there's a lot out there that, we can leave or not even see or get in trouble with very quickly.
Yeah, a sandbox game in a sci-fi setting where there's space travel involved can get out of hand really quick. Really, really quick.
Well, I mean, if travel does pop up, keep it quick.
Yeah.
Don't devote an entire gaming session on getting in the shuttlecraft and getting to the planet and getting off.
Right. Now, what about some tips to make gaming successful for everybody?
Well, that's why we're here, right, Bill?
In theory, or so I was told.
One of the things that I think is great fun, and do you remember playing Leopard Women from Venus?
Yes.
The GM had us all go around the table and say which actor was portraying our character. So my character was portrayed by Zach Galifianakis, which I thought was a perfect choice for my characters. So base your NPCs and even have your players pick like real people, like actors. You know, who's playing this character in the movie. It makes it a lot easier to bring it into a more modern setting than a fantasy setting.
Well, it's a little bit more relatable. Let them do the voice. If there's a voice, let them do the voice. You know,
It makes it a little bit more relatable too.
Yep.
Yeah,
easier to play.
Yeah. But especially if you're used to being that kind of fantasy kind of trope of a character. You know, everybody knows Aragorn. Or any of the writers of Rohan, so a lot of times we'll base our stuff off of that or any number of fantasy type of characters.
Well, you remember how we mentioned the ETA system in another episode?
Yes.
We were all based off of 70s and 80s action heroes, or actually a culmination of 2 or 3. And that became, again, you know, it can get a little campy, but sometimes these space operas, that's what your table needs.
Yeah.
And let them run with it. I mean, we had a blast. We're doing the voices and relating to parts in the movies and transferring it over to the game itself. So if that's what it takes, then let them go with it.
I'm glad you brought up the ETA thing because I botched the name. It was the hybrid gaming engine.
Oh, okay.
But ETA was I still don't understand how the philosophy behind ETA, but basically the ETA was the poker chip that you threw in there to kind of modify an action. But it's still a fantastic system. And find him on Facebook and support him. I can't wait till he's done with his stuff. Description can be a little challenging too. In a sci-fi setting, you know, you got a lot of technobabble, a lot of machinery and computers and moving parts, and you may not be that GM that knows a lot of sciencey stuff and can just pull it out of the air.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
Because you're one of those GMs that knows a lot of mechanical stuff and moving parts, and I am not.
But see, not even just the mechanical parts. This is all the technical parts. You know, all the different computers, or
Yeah.
arrays and satellites.
Yeah, and that could be hard. That could be hard for a GM.
If you don't, well, especially if your player knows it and you don't.
Yeah.
Or at least pulls it off where you think he knows it.
Yeah.
He has more convincing technobabble than you do.
Yeah, and you run into problems like this with the hard sci-fi.
Yes.
Your Star Trek universe, your space opera stuff. So I would suggest, and I've done this before, print out pictures, ships.
Oh yeah.
You know, alien landscapes, machinery, gear and equipment, that sort of thing, and let the players look at that. If you have a customizable GM screen, slide that stuff on the player side of the GM screen so that they can see it. You know, they can see what their spaceship
picture's worth
is.
1,000 words, and if you can say even if you can say 500 words, there's your ship.
Yeah, and
there's a space station. This is what it looks like.
I've even been at your table before where you've done that with monsters, and you know, this is what it looks like. Have a look.
Yeah, I'll just flip the laptop around, bring up a nice big color picture. That's what you're looking at, and it makes it a whole lot easier.
It gives you a whole another perception of what you're looking, what you're dealing with.
Well, that way, and like we've mentioned this before, with descriptions, a lot of times, if you're not particularly descriptive, a lot of people aren't going to be on the same page as you. They're not going to. They're going to say, "All right, what exactly are you looking at? What exactly am I looking at?" And everyone's going to have a different mind's eye. So you just show a picture. Everyone's literally on the same page.
Yeah,
because you're showing the picture.
Yep.
This is what you're fighting. And it's like, oh, and all the tentacles really do have spikes on the end of it, like it shows it? Oh, yeah, they do. Okay, and then off you go and run. So, yeah, I've used that a lot, especially with monsters. but even castles. If you're in the fantasy world, space station and the science fiction, what type gun is it? You can find all kinds of pictures of concept artists that have come up with different for weapons and ships and stuff like that, and just like, okay, this is what you're looking at.
Yeah, just look up Google sci-fi steampunk weapons or whatever, and you got a whole slew of them.
Oh yeah, so yeah, there's more than enough out there, resources out there. As they said, print a picture. Even if you, a lot of times you can use this for your landscape as well, for your internal mechanics of a ship or a room or a setting. Print it out, throw it on the table.
Yeah, DeviantArt's a good resource for that.
Very good resource.
If you've ever been on DeviantArt, it's a good resource for any sort of pictures of anything, really. I mean, you name it, you can find it on DeviantArt, and there's a lot of talented artists there.
Well, I mean, do you have who else was that? I just put in any search engine.
Yeah.
I use the preface concept art because you get a lot more original stuff that way that's out there, and not a little less mainstream. So especially when you're dealing with aliens or you want to deal with ships or something like that, a lot of that concept stuff is really, really nice because it's not something they've seen before usually, unless they're delving through the same places you are, looking for stuff for their character. But concept art is a really, really good place to go.
And with that, we're going to conclude this episode, and those are some of the tips for starting a sci-fi campaign.
Live long and prosper.
God damn it. May the force be with you. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.